Hey, everybody, welcome to the NYC Real Estate Podcast. This is the last episode of 2025. I'm your host, Mark Levine, one of the owners of a few different management companies in New York City, and I've been doing this for about 30 years. And actually, I just started up a TikTok page, so put a few videos out there if you want to follow me at Mark in Real Estate. Pretty easy. This is as I said, our last episode of the year. It's been a little bit of a slow year while we've been really growing our internal companies, but we're looking to get back into the game in 2026 and provide you with a lot of information. If you want to reach out to the show, you could do that at nycrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's nycrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. And now on to today's special guest. We've got Jeff Carleton from Runwise, the co-founder and CEO. How you doing, Jeff?
Great, Mark. Thank you. And thank you for getting me in this year to wrap up
Uh,
the year. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. There's no way that I would love to end the year than to figure out how can we save a little bit of money? How can we operate our buildings a little bit more efficiently? We're in the throes of winter right now. So before we get into it, why don't you take a second, tell everybody your experience, how you got involved in the company, and what you are focusing right now.
Sure. So again, thank you. My background is I was a property manager. I started in the property management business a long time ago. I worked my way up to like a general manager position at a large real estate owners company back in the day. And I got into Runwise because I would visit our buildings and they would be super, super hot, even on a day like today, right? When it's 30 degrees outside, you walk in to the buildings I used to walk into. And even today you walk into buildings and they're 80 degrees. And I just thought, we are so careful about how we spend money and how efficiently we operate our properties, our rent rolls, or everything. But fuel got expensive and the fuel was literally going out the window. So I realized that there really wasn't a tech platform to run properties efficiently. And that's, try doing it off the shelf with off the shelf existing controls and could never quite find the right hardware software combination to run these buildings the way I wanted. Got into the business of building and monitoring controls to make buildings, prevent them from being overheated and run more efficiently.
And that was before, really, honestly, so well before the AI innovations that came through. Because right now, I've been cobbling together a bunch of, I would say they're proprietary, but we're building them through the tools that are now out there for project management and dealing with communications. So when you were doing this, it was really a bootstrap kind of build it, hire coders, develop a platform, start to finish. I think that you came in at the right time for the right type of business. And what I've seen, and I'll let you continue, what I've seen in the industry over the last few years, and whenever I look at any piece or component of service industry that support buildings, generally speaking, they are all 20 years behind everybody else, every other industry. So when you look at now we've got the real estate technology side where, you've got a lot of companies in the space. It wasn't always like that. So now it's kind of picking up. But for what you've been doing and what we've been using as a service for a variety of our buildings, it's been really helpful because until this moment, there were very few options to do that. And, you're probably the leader of this right now in New York City. So it's exciting to watch. And we have your system, obviously, in a bunch of buildings that we manage, and we can go through that. So in terms of what year did you start this Runwise, actually?
We really started the concept in 2012.
Uh-huh.
And then we tried doing it, again, with off the shelf controls, existing equipment. We really went all in 2018 when we had just kind of come to the end of the road with off the shelf stuff. We said, we're going to build our own control.
Yeah.
I had nightmares and miserable times building our own hardware and putting it into buildings, but we got through it. Even today, you're always innovating, always creating new stuff, and there's always challenges. But yeah, we did it. And when you talk about AI, when this started, it was person eye. It was log in and check the settings. And what we realized really was that property operators would put in a control, but then it's almost like I have a son, he's 6 years old. You give him a new toy, he loves it for the first day or two, then he forgets about it, right?
Yeah.
People would put in these controls. I'm going to log in every day. Really, after 2 or 3 weeks, I was the owner of the building. Like, are you logging in? And I said, I don't have time, So long story short, I hired my brother as a there was no machine learning. It was just person learning. And you just log in every day to about 100 some odd buildings. We dropped the cost significantly, and then we realized there was something there.
Are you finding that you're able to now automate a lot of these behind the scenes and have actions and just automation so that you can save a little bit on the man hours that it takes to get through that process?
100%. And it's better for clients as well, because the goal is a real time building, right?
Yeah,
So, and when we've been talking about fuel savings, but people also want to know the moment their boiler goes down,
yeah,
right? You don't want, the worst thing a property operator could do is get a call from a tenant to say, I have no heat or hot water, because by that time the boiler's been off for 3 or 4 hours. So there's
yeah.
real-time connection to it. And then yes, automated learning the building and sort of automating that process to keep people comfortable. For example, when it's getting really, really cold, preheating up the building to
Right.
anticipate like the sub-freezing temperatures.
So what I like to use Runwise for, and I'm in the platform that you've built, is a variety of our different types of buildings have not only the boiler control, but they also have the sensors in the apartment. So we're running the boiler off. And I'm sure you could describe this a lot better than I can because I'm just a
I hope
layperson
so.
with this. I would hope so too. But
Yeah.
it's running off the desired indoor temperature, which we average out on the platform versus the outside thermostat, which is running constantly because if it's 12 degrees outside consistently, it's just the boiler's gonna keep cycling if you're just on a normal boiler service. So how does your software set up so that if we put your hardware in the building, how does it maintain all of that with all the different apartments, all the different needs of the units, the comfortability of each resident is different. It's all subjective. Somebody's cold at 75, somebody's hot at 68. So how do you manage when you're dealing with potentially going into a building to pitch the service as to, yeah, you're not going to make everybody happy, but we can start to maintain temperatures in a certain way that are legal and above. We can save money. What's the benefit and what's show me like the roadmap of how you go through that.
Yeah. And I'll just point out, you brought up a key point that I missed, was that we run the boiler based on the indoor feedback. And that is like a core component. We have a wireless network that takes the average temperatures typically higher up in the building and brings it down to the boiler. So the boiler knows, hey, it's 72 or 73 degrees in the space. I don't need to run for X period of time. And then you really save money when it's mild. That's when the most of the energy savings was, like 45, 50, 55 degrees is
Yeah.
the savings. When it's a day, these sort of days where it's in the 20s, not much can be saved. Yeah, I think that you start the process as far as how to handle, the transition. You just have to be very clear and upfront that not everyone's going to get exactly what they want in a centrally heated property. So that is number one, being transparent about that, because if you represent it as a smart thermostat system for everyone in the building, you will make nobody happy.
Yeah.
We always recommend that they do the heat distribution work before or right after we install it. So if you've got exposed pipes where you've got steam pipes that are running through a cold basement, and if in the steam building, if you don't have proper air venting, that's where it takes 20 minutes for one person to get heat, where takes 4 minutes for the other person to get heat. A control on its own doesn't solve that. But what it does is it gets you away from hey, this person's always hot, this person's always cold. So what was the action item? Well, the super went like this on a dial, right? So
Yeah.
at least we can see it. So now you can start to diagnose it. Then you start to make improvements to the building, and you can start to get it more comfortable. I think the most important thing is that you start bringing down temperatures slowly.
Mm-hmm.
We go into buildings and they are literally 80 degrees, and we have people all the time, oh, it's 80 degrees, I want it to be 70 degrees in the building. If you do that, you're going to have a board that is in revolt, because they're going to be shocked. So I think it's really important to slowly bring the temperatures down to like sort of find that right balance. And yeah, there's automation for that, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of communication. And as long as you communicate up front, you can usually have a good transition.
Yeah. Now, okay, so let's go through the components. So we've let's say in a steam boiler, we've got the boiler itself, we've got the burner. Your service, your software, your hardware, that would replace the original heat timer that controls the boiler, right? So we're sidestepping that when we're putting your box in there. which will have what you said communicates via wireless or repeaters to the sensors that are in the units, and that
Mhm.
dictates the temperatures. Where are the other sensors that are put on either the boiler or on the stack or on, the water system so that we could see if there's any water loss? Like, what are the extras above just the temperature that we could kind of suss out and say, okay, what you said before is getting to see a boiler issue before it happens instead of after. Are there key components of this system that will call out trouble before it happens, and where are those placed?
Sure. So I'll go through the most important ones. The most important one is that burner alarm. It's called flame fail. That's when there's usually like a red light in the boiler room. So what you do is we take that data and we transmit it over to the box. So it's normally not, that alarm condition doesn't happen. The moment that alarm condition happens, our sensor, it triggers our sensor, tells our box this happened. So that's like the most important one, is the flame fail. The other important ones are, the other one's called a makeup water feed. Makeup water feed, in an ideal world, when you make steam, it goes to the radiators, it cools down and comes back as hot water. That hot water goes into the boiler, easily gets reheated quickly, goes back to steam. To it's a flywheel. It's really, really efficient. If that hot water isn't making it back to the boiler because there's a crack, and usually it's not visible, usually it's underground. If that water isn't making it back, then you need new cold water to fill the boiler. Because if your water level drops too low, you could damage your boiler and you go off on low water.
Yeah.
So the more cold water you're feeding into the building, you are wasting a lot of energy, because now you're heating up 40, 45-degree water up to 212 degrees, and you're damaging the tubes in your boiler. So,
Yep.
and then what happens there? It's like it's a vicious cycle. One tube breaks, then the other, then you plug it. So if you have buildings where you're losing water, you're wasting money, but you're also really shortening the lifespan of your boiler. And a boiler replacement right now is really expensive. So makeup water and flame fail are like the two core ones. We also give you the temperature of the domestic hot water going upstairs. That's the water that you use for showers, and hot water in the apartments. That should be around 120 degrees. A mixing valve can seize in either an open or closed position at times, especially older ones. So you might have water going upstairs at 180 degrees, which is really dangerous. And sometimes it gets stuck in reverse. You have water going up at 50 degrees and people are
Right.
complaining. So yeah, those are like the core ones. We have the temperature of the supply and the return and the pressure of the boiler. There's a whole bunch of other ones, but those are like the core meat and potato sensors that we want to know in every building.
And also one other thing, if you're introducing a lot of fresh water into the boiler, that also is screwing up the chemical balance. So,
Yep.
we get the water treatment for all of those buildings monthly where they maintain the pH
Yeah.
balance of it. So it's going to corrode from the inside. So
Chemical
it's
is
just,
gone. Chemical
yeah.
is gone almost instantly.
Yeah, and that is a big problem. And I have a few buildings where there's no return line, and one of the problems that we're seeing consistently in those buildings is, especially in condos where there's a lot of people who just don't live there, and they're either pied-à-terres or some of the higher end buildings where just people are in Europe or they come back and they're hardly here. You have three people in a building and they shower at different times, and the water takes forever to heat up because you've got to run it through the entire system because there's no return and there's no, it's just hanging out there cold in the pipes. And that's
Yep.
also a struggle because we're looking at, we were talking before we hopped on about local N97, coming up this year, and we can kind of dial into that for a second. But when I'm looking at the things that we're focusing on with local N97, part of that is the water use and also the electric use, and also the gas usage. So if we're running consistently some of these buildings for 20 minutes to get the higher floors to, be where they're serviceable with the heat or with the hot water, then we're just throwing money out the window. So it's coming up with
Yep.
solutions, I think, over a long-term period for these. So with 97 coming up, we're going through it. We've got Article 320 buildings. We've got our Article 321 buildings. How does a system like yours play into this whole carbon and energy reduction that is required for buildings over 25,000 square feet?
Yeah. It is a major factor. We have 13 or 14 days left to file local on 97. So I guess if people haven't started that yet, it's kind of late.
Yeah.
But it's amazing that that filing date is actually here. Okay, so for the way I look at it, and when you take let's take your typical centrally heated co-op with air conditioners in the windows for cooling, steam boiler for heat and hot water, elevator. The boiler room and the domestic hot water that leaves it, that is, let's assume it's powered by natural gas. That is typically 70 up to 80% of the energy grade that you see on the front of the building is derived from your HVAC, your heat and hot water usage. The other 20% of that 20%, typically 15% of that might be the tenant electric, which is sort of inelastic. You're not really going to do that much to tell your tenants, what to do with the electric
Yeah.
in their own apartments. But that energy use is a factor in your energy grade. Then you've got hallway lighting, elevator motors, not much you can do there. For the hallway lighting, most people have LEDs and some sort of timer, right? But there aren't any other like big ticket items. So if you're overheating your building, you are drastically increasing your energy score, making it worse rather,
Yeah.
through overheating. So by controlling your boiler and making sure that it only runs when it actually needs to run, you're eliminating all that waste. That will significantly improve your energy grade. We've had buildings go from D to A by putting in a control, putting in pipe insulation on their supply lines and return, and then like doing, if it's a steam building, doing proper venting. So it's a major factor for residential buildings
Yeah.
for Local Law 97.
One of the key parts of your program is that you could upload utility information for each specific building. So on my portal, where I go into your software, I see all my buildings. I go into my building and I can go upload utilities. And I know that that's the way that we could try to focus on how are we saving money from past usage? How does it relate to today? What is behind the scenes for you when you're looking at whatever utility information that we upload? What are you looking for, and how does that spit out the numbers of savings? And what are the key markers for you to look at?
So yeah, we have to get the data. First off, we want to know the therm consumption 12 months before we started, and then we want to start comparing to each month how we're doing in comparison. So we want to know, for example, this October versus last October, before and after Runwise.
Yeah.
Um, we have fuel API. So Con Edison has an API, so we pull data automatically from their site. We have a data feed with National Grid and other utilities nationwide where we work, because getting that data is critical to us. You can actually have a new feature on the site. It's self-service. You can click it, put in your utility login, and link the accounts yourself instead of like sending us bills and us manually putting together savings reports. As we grew, that wasn't scalable. And then also it's like you're paying for a service to reduce costs, and there's this big reveal at the end of the year if you did it. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, so we pull the data live as it comes. You want to compare the therm consumption, not the cost, the actual units of gas that you consumed, and you want to compare it to the weather. And without getting too complicated, the way I like to explain it is, if it's 10% warmer this heating season and you use 10% less fuel, I didn't do anything for you, right? Because we don't take credit for the warmer weather. So we do, it's a weather adjusted analysis. We compare the therm consumption or oil consumption to the weather. And so it's called normalizing it, makes it like apples to apples. And then we see the percent change
Right.
after that.
Okay. Very cool. So there's a lot of behind the scenes information, a lot of work that is off of our plate. And I think that one of the best things is, we can get a phone call, or a board member could email us, or a building owner could, send us a note that they're getting complaints, which should all come through us anyway. We can go onto the app. We could quickly adjust. We could see what's down. We can call the boiler company. There's a lot that we could do remotely now that is great, and we don't have to be on site every time that there's a boiler shutdown. We don't have to check the panel. So from a perspective of like a large building operator, where you've got multiple clients that are running this, it definitely helps to consolidate and make it a little bit more functional on the management side or on the building ownership side. So at least from the perspective of somebody who's managing a lot of buildings, it helps to ease the burden of my internal team. So it's a software with a service, which is great.
Awesome. Thank you.
So what are you guys looking at doing in the next few years? Do you have anything that you could share? And if there's nothing on the roadmap, that's fine. But I'm always interested to see where you're kind of going.
So yeah, we do. And what's interesting is as we got our start in heating. That was my background, and we do heating building after heating building. What we found over time was that fine, we would save someone 10, 15, $20,000 on their fuel, and they would come back and say, "This is great. You did what you said, but my water bill, not the boiler water, like my domestic water bill, skyrocketed, and I only found out 3 to 6 months after when I got my bill." So it's kind of like the same concept again. And actually, being very frank, when I prepared for this podcast, I thought water cost about a penny a gallon.
Yeah.
That's always been the rule of thumb.
Right.
Penny a gallon, and then if you did what's called MCP, which is like a fixed amount, fixed cost per unit, that was always a little under 1,000 back from what I remember. Now, when I did a little refresher, when you add the new cost of water with the 159% sewer tax, you're almost at 2 cents per gallon of water. A little bit less than that, like 1.7. But rounded up, 2 cents per gallon of water is really expensive, and the MCP program is over $1,300. So you've got buildings right now where you're one or two running toilets away from like a $20,000 to $30,000 water bill increase.
Yeah.
And you can have the best super in the world. He doesn't have X-ray vision, right? And a lot of people, have running toilets, and usually just running toilets. People see and report like a leaking shower or a sink. They get annoyed, so they go and they fix the washer. But a running toilet could quietly be costing you a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we've been really razor focused on, and we're gonna have new products in the new year on letting people know exactly what's happening with their DEP water usage. Every building on Runwise, you type in your DEP login, it automatically fetches that and lets you know if you're on track. Like for normal water consumption, it looks at if you have water consumption at night. And then if you want to get more granular, we can actually monitor which pipes have running water down to like which toilets are running. So now, rather than, hey, Mark, the DEP bill went up $15,000 last quarter, it's, hey, Mark, apartment 3D has a running toilet just started yesterday. So we're trying to provide the same insight and actionable items for water as we did for heating.
And that to me is more of the more important thing, because that could add up even quicker than anything else. And when we have the rental buildings, that's the harder thing to get on top of, because shareholders, unit owners, condos and co-ops, they understand that their costs only increase with their costs will increase if the costs aren't kept low. So they're going to pay that month to month. But on the rental side, especially on maybe the rent stabilized or controlled apartments, it doesn't matter how much energy they use. It doesn't matter how much water. It doesn't matter, so we could have a year goes by. Hopefully, inspections are taking place for various other things, and you could really kind of pull that out. But you could have months go by realistically where there's a running toilet, there's a running sink, and nobody mentions it because it's not an inconvenience to them. But in reality, it's completely inverting the cost of the building, and it's hard, on the market rent ones to keep the rent as low when the costs are going up so high. Obviously, it's market driven, but if there was a product that could hook into the system and see exactly what you're saying with all the toilets and the sinks and the various water lines, where we could get a hold of individual buildings and see and understand where our water loss is and what our especially if they're bigger buildings where they have to apply for this local N97 and they have to abide by the reductions or they get penalized. Like, it's just money out of the pocket, money out of the pocket, money out of the pocket. How do
There's
we
no
stop
benefit.
that?
There's no benefit to the shareholder. It's not like a luxury you're paying for. It's like, hey, that 10,000 was worth it to do X. That's fine.
Right.
This is just literally money down the drain. That's what's so frustrating about it. So that's what we've been focused on. And just like an interesting story, I actually just visited a university to look at their heating and cooling setup. Runwise also, like, the other thing that is on the horizon is central cooling systems as well. We are like focused on having a cooling rollout this summer. But so we look at the heating plant, and to be frank, it's really well run. They've got a BMS system. They've got every valve calibrated indoor. There's a couple of little things that we could do. On the cooling side, it's pretty well set up, pretty well monitored. It's all online in one place. It's a complex BMS system. The cooling budget and the heating budget are both about million five, about 1.5 million each. The water budget is also about 1.5 million. So heating's pretty well, we can help them. Cooling could use a little tweak. What are you doing for the $1.5 million water budget? Nothing. Nothing. There isn't any, like, there's a lot of people that are so focused on energy, which they should be. And then you ask somebody, what's your strategy for making sure you don't have any leaks in the building? And it literally doesn't exist.
Right.
So I think that it is, I think it's a great market. And I think it's another way we can help our clients.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that. And I'm always open for that conversation because I think at the end
Awesome.
of the day, when we're operating, if we could do it at scale, that's even better. If we can try to focus on a collection of buildings together. And I know we're doing that with a few of our companies with you guys.
Awesome.
But wherever we can kind of just keep stepping up on that service and the things that we can monitor. There's no downside. I mean, yeah, there's a cost to the monthly, and there's a cost for the service, but the hope is that whatever you're bringing to the table is going to be more than offset by the savings that you could produce, right? So that's same with management. We're hired for a job. We're trying to lower costs, and that's part of the value add of these situations is that we can leverage some of our bigger vendors and bring them in and lower the cost, just like you guys can lower the cost based on just your hardware and software. So it's this constant moving target with New York City, and who knows what's 2026 is coming. Who knows
Yeah.
what's going to come across our table? We don't know yet on the with the administration changing, not getting into politics at all, but just we don't know what it's going to hold. We don't know which initiatives are going to fall away. We don't know what's going to be enacted. So we're all in a holding pattern, but all we could do is go with what we know and keep moving forward with what we find out. So we'll see where we get there. When we get into, as we end this, I'm going to put all of your contact information in both the video description and into the description of the podcast so everybody will know how to get in touch with you directly. Is there anything else you want to cover before we end this podcast and go on to the end of year holiday party situations that we've all got going on?
No, I don't really, I don't want to take up too much time. If people have holiday parties that they're getting ready for, I don't want to be the guy preventing that. But I would just reiterate that fuel costs are expensive, and there is some uncertainty about what next year will look like. Not speaking politics, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. You don't want to pay for fuel or water that you don't use. I think that's one thing we can certainly agree on, right? It doesn't really matter.
That's a bipartisan issue. Absolutely.
There's a bipartisan. We just found a bipartisan thing. I mean, no one wants to spend $15,000 on a leaking toilet that doesn't provide any service, or a building that's 85 degrees that makes people uncomfortable. So that's really what we focus on. And then as we do layer in products, water, we try and keep everything in one dashboard. That's like the last thing I would leave you with is there are so many dashboards and so many new things coming out. One of the advantages with Runwise is that if you're doing water, or if you're doing cooling, if you're doing heating, we actually have a product for natural gas. It's all in one place. And I think that can simplify operations for owners where they have like a heating control and a water guy and this person and that person. And then you got 20 buildings, that multiplier effect, it's like hundreds of touch points. So that we're trying to simplify management in this world that is getting busier and busier. And that's what we need to do. So, and I just thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming. It's always been a pleasure. I know I get to see you guys sometimes at the expositions once or twice a year when we do the shows and have booths, but always a pleasure working with you guys. Can't recommend you guys enough. I appreciate you stopping by on the podcast today. I know we're all busy as we end the year, especially in the heating season. As I said, I'll leave all your information, but if anybody wants to get in touch with Jeff or his Runwise team, you can always tell them that you found them over here on the podcast. If you're still listening and you want to get in touch with us again, it's nycrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. And I wish everybody, including you, Jeff, a happy new year, happy holiday, and we'll get together back again in 2026.
Same to you. Thank you, Mark.
All right. Bye-bye.